Boys, UFC 304 just around the corner, and I'm not gonna lie, there's a lot of fighters on that card that are pretty hated in the broad spectrum of the UFC fan base, so I thought, we might as well get it over with. Let's go 2024 most hated fighter tier list. As you can see at the top, we have hated. Then we have more hated than liked. That's where, some fans here and there like him, but majority of it is hate. Then more liked than hate, pretty much is the opposite of what I just said. Then, of course, we have loved. And those are for those very special fighters, some that have like zero hate towards them. And to start it all off, I don't see this guy getting any hate, to be honest. There's like zero hate towards Volkanovski. He's just all around a good dude. Everyone likes Volkanovski. We're always rooting for him to win. And yeah, to be honest, like a perfect representation of the loved category. But let's keep moving down the list. We have around 40 different fighters, so I should have pretty much everybody here. If I'm missing some guys, you have to let me know in the comments below. But without further ado, let's keep going on. We have Anthony Smith. Like I said, we have like everyone here from like heavyweights all the way down to that flyweight division. Everybody is here. Anthony Smith, I don't know if he's fully hated just about yet, but the delusional portion of him really like stands out, and that's why a lot of people don't like him whatsoever. He is definitely way more hated than what he is liked, and there is no middle ground. You can't be in the middle, absolutely not. There's no middle ground available for this, so he's going in that more hated than liked category. I also forgot to mention, I also have every single champion on this list, so if you're wondering why these guys are on this list, some of them don't really make much sense, but we have every single champion on here as well. So let's keep moving over to the light heavyweight champion. I think, there's definitely some hate for Pereira, but, maybe when he first got into the UFC, I didn't see a lot of people liking him that much. No fans cheering him on, nothing like that. Then he slowly got into that more liked category. I think right now he's at like that very end of that loved category. He's definitely not the most loved, but coming in here, saving cars left, right, and center. Best believe as of right now, he is probably one of the most loved, at least champions on the list so far. I do see an argument putting him in like more liked than hated. But as of right now, the fact that he's been saving cards, you have to put him in this category. But moving down, we also have another champion, flyweight division. I think Pantoja is way more hated than what he is liked, mainly because it probably has to do with a little bit of his style, but majority of it is just that flyweight division. No one really likes those flyweights, I'm not gonna lie, but definitely more hated than liked. Is he more hated than someone like an Anthony Smith? I don't think so. I think he's at the very end of more hated than liked. Moving down, we have a former champion, Aljamain Sterling. I don't think this guy can ever get into the more liked than hated category. I honestly don't think that's possible for Aljo. Is he straight up hated? I mean, there was a point where everyone just hated Aljo. Right now, doing his thing into that featherweight division, really on the cusp of being like a double champ. He's one fight away from having another title run. And yeah, right now, doing his thing in bantamweight as well. I think a lot of his success that he had at his bantamweight, defending his belt multiple times, I think he's got a little bit less hated, but he's definitely still more hated than he is liked. So keep moving down. Again, this is all in random order. We have Arman Tsarukyan. I don't know really where to put Arman, I'm not gonna lie. I think he's more liked than hated right now. He's definitely not loved, but I think right now there's more love towards Arman Tsarukyan than there is hate. I think a lot of people had some respect for him when he started fighting the guy in the crowd, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, really weird spot to put for Arman, but I think as of right now, more liked than hated. Maybe he's more hated just because of what he did to our boy Du Bronx, but more liked than hated in my opinion. Moving down, we have Bo Nickal. Bo Nickal probably, I don't think people hate Bo Nickal as like a person. I think most of the hate towards Bo Nickal is coming from the fact that he's gained all these Dana White privileges. So in that aspect, I think he's slightly more hated than liked right now, only because of the Dana White privileges. But moving down to another flyweight, we have Brandon Moreno. I don't know if there's a single guy that hates Brandon Moreno, to be honest. I don't think there's a single person not loving Brandon Moreno. Just realized it's a little bit messed up, so let's put Pereira here and then Volkanovski here. So pretty much what this means is Volkanovski is the most loved out of all these guys. Pereira, in my opinion, is like on that tipping point of could be more liked than hated than loved right now. And then Moreno, I've seen very few things of people hating on Moreno. But moving on, we have T-City. As of right now, time is everything, and there was a point where he was like super loved by the fans. Then he got into more liked than hated. Right now, he's like on that tipping point of being more hated than liked. Pulling out of his latest fight doesn't help. A lot of people just think he's a little bit of a weird guy, but right now he's on that tipping point of being in this category. But for right now, we'll keep him right here. Let's move over to someone else who's like super loved right now. Is he the most loved person on this list? Absolutely not. That's of course Do Bronx Oliveira. Do Bronx went on a generational run of being pretty much like a no-name. No one really cared about this guy into becoming one of the most fan favorite fighters in the entire UFC. But I think we have a contender for our first hated category. It's gonna be Ciryl Gane. You know, there is a point where a lot of people really like Ciryl Gane. There's a point where he could have been in this loved category, but time gone on, he's ducked people. He's refusing to fight people. He's rather go spend time, you know, making movies. As of right now, the entire MMA community is really fed up with Ciryl Gane, and I think right now he's one of the most hated, especially heavyweight fighters there is currently in the UFC. But let's keep moving down. We have Corey Sandhagen. I think Corey is a perfect representative of being more like than hate. Yeah, there is people who aren't going to like Corey, but as an all-around MMA fighter fan, he's not the fighter I like the most. Is he someone that I have some, you know, dislike towards? I'm sure there is, but more times than not, he is that more liked than hated fighter. Moving down, Dan 50K Ige, Dan 2-minute Ige, Dan give me 1 hour Ige. I think his latest performance has put him into that loved category. Is it weird having him here with all these other like legends? 100%. But because of his last performance with Diego Lopez, which I'm also going to put here, I think it makes sense. Diego Lopez, Dan Ige, they honestly deserve to be right here in this loved category from their last performance. Mostly that Dan Ige side, but there's been a lot of hype for Diego Lopez. Again, there's very few amount of like hate pages or hate content I've seen on Diego Lopez. But moving over to someone else, going into that hated category, we have Belal Muhammad. You know, there's not that many fans of Belal Muhammad, and if there is any, they're just lying to you for clout. Belal Muhammad also fighting this weekend. You know, he has been looking better than usual, Belal Muhammad media days, but at the end of the day, I think Belal Muhammad might be the most hated person in that welterweight division. And it's close because we have someone like an Ian Gary there, but a lot of people are really, really like, who is this guy? I forget this guy's name, type of vibe when it comes to Belal Muhammad. But to keep moving over, Dricus du Plessis. You know, I think Dricus, as of right now, might be on the cusp of going into the more dislike than like. But you know, there's not that much stuff to not like about Dricus. If he goes out there and just flatline KOs Israel Adesanya, best believe he'll be in that like loved category. But till then, right now, he's definitely more liked than hated. Let's keep moving over. Dustin Poirier. Now, I do think Dustin's going to fight one more time. I'm not going to lie. Do I think he deserves to go in this loved category? I don't. I still see people hating on Dustin Poirier. He's definitely more liked than hated at this point in his career, but I don't quite see him in this loved category just yet. But he is super close. We'll put him at the end of here. Moving over, someone who's more hated than like, we have Triple C. You know what, guys? I think I might be the most hated person in the UFC type of guy. Definitely not the most hated, but he's pretty close. I think people hate him more than someone like an Anthony Smith, more than an Aljamain Sterling. So he's close to being in that hated category, but he's just not quite there. Moving over to someone who was hated for a good portion of time. I remember when people just dogged on Curtis Blaydes. They didn't like him whatsoever. Right now, you know, he is still more hated than what he is liked. I don't see that many people, like I said, even having many like fans. I know he's probably like a good guy and all, but the fans wise, I think the fans don't like this guy as much as they like him. Moving over, someone else who's hated. This guy used to be someone who is like borderline loved by the fans and quickly turned into someone who they hate. Honestly, at this point, he might be the most hated person on this entire list. And it's crazy how fast he did a speed run, let's make the UFC fan base hate me career move. But it is what it is. Ian Gary, definitely at this point in time, the most hated guy on this entire list. But I don't know where I should put Israel Adesanya. Maybe it's bias, me saying that he's in this hated category, but I think he's close to being in that hated category. You know, let's see what he does with his title shot against DDP. Let's see how that media day goes around. Let's see where he is mentally wise, the interviews he does, because that could be a speed run Hall of Fame career move into going to hated, depending on how it plays out. If he goes out there and, you know, cuts a decent promo, knocks out Dricus, you know, the fan base could switch on him really fast and he could get into this more liked than hated. But for right now, he's so close in being in that hated category. But Moving on, someone else who's probably not as equally hated as someone like an Israel Adesanya. I think Colby Covington is slightly more hated than Izzy. And to be honest, I don't see that many fans of Colby Covington as of recently, especially from his last performance against Leon. Right now, he's definitely in that hated category. I think the fans have just seen through Colby right now and are just fed up with all the antics that he does. But moving on, Jailton Almeida. Again, one of the heavyweights that the fans absolutely hate. I don't see any real fans of this guy. I don't see any people excited to watch his fights. One of the more boring fight styles, and because of that, he's probably right there with Cyril Gane, to be honest. Moving down, Conor McGregor. I don't know if I should put him in hated right now. There's a lot of fans backing out of that Conor hype train. A lot of people, flipping their opinion on Conor. For right now, because he does have a huge fan base. But the overall MMA fan side, I think overall, the MMA fans are tired of Conor McGregor. And he is, right now, more hated than what he is liked. It might completely change once we see him in action again. But, it's been years since we last seen him in the octagon. We've just seen him talk. And because of that, I think I'm going to put him in that hated category, because he's just on Twitter all the time, just talking, coked up, saying that he wants to fight. He's going to fight this guy, fight that guy, go in the boxing ring. But in reality, this man's on his yacht, smoking it up, snorting up that coke, just going crazy. Definitely going to have the wildest midlife crisis out of all of these guys. And to be honest, it's going to be a very exciting time. But right now, I think in this point in time, he is more hated than anything else. Moving over, Jamal Hill could also go into that hated category. Just by the way, he's, talking about his last fight against Alex Pereira, but I don't think he's that much hated. I do think he's more hated than what he is liked, but I'll probably put him right here between Pantoja and Sterling. Moving on, Gene Silva, definitely more liked than what he is hated. Guy came out of nowhere. To be honest, I don't see anyone really hating on this guy. Am I going to put him in that loved category? Honestly, maybe because of his fight against Drew Dober, I might have to put him here, to be honest. Just because of, short notice, came there, dog walked Drew Dober. I think a lot of fans have jumped on that Gene Silva train, especially from that performance, seeing how crazy of a guy he is. He has a good personality for the sport. Right now, I think he's pretty loved. Moving down, John Jones. Does it really need to be said that he might be the most hated guy in this entire sport, to be honest, especially in the UFC? But again, I feel like there's only a very few small niche like nut huggers that are so supportive of John Jones that it quiets out everyone else. But there's only a few super diehard John Jones fans. The rest of them don't like him. Let's be realistic. Are we talking about GOAT status? No, we're talking about just overall person, and John Jones is just a terrible person. Is he the most exciting fighter either? Absolutely not. When was the last time he fought? 2 years ago? Something stupid like that? Exactly. Let's just keep moving on. I don't think it should be that hot of a take to put John Jones in this most hated category, to be honest. You guys have to let me know in the comments below. If you disagree with this, let me know your reasonings why, because I think he's the most hated guy in this entire roster. Moving down, we have Kamaru Usman. There was a point in time where people hated Kamaru Usman. As of now, he's one of the most liked UFC fighters on the entire roster. Is he more liked than someone like a Dustin Poirier? I don't think so. Is he more liked than a Corey Sandhagen? I think so. I think this is a perfect spot for him. Moving down, Ilia Topuria, another guy that was in that more liked than hated category, but as of recently, his latest antics on Twitter, just the way that he thinks that since he knocked out and beat Alexander Volkanovski, that means he takes all of his achievements with him, which isn't how it works. So as of recently, been a little bit of like a spoiled brat. A lot of MMA fans have started to dislike the way he's been handling things. I think he's just behind Sterling right now, but trust me, once he gets into that octagon again and he fights, it won't take long for him to go back into this more liked and hated section. Moving down, Kevin Gastelum. A lot of people are really fed up with Kevin Gastelum. This fat sack of shit just can't cut weight, missing weight against D-Rod. I think a lot of people are just really upset with him. There was a point where he was probably more liked, but right now I think he's more hated than liked, just because of the way his career has unfolded and just the seriousness of how he's been preparing. And it's just his latest performance didn't help him get into this category. Moving over, Kevin Holland. I think Kevin Holland just barely goes into this more liked than hated section, but there's a lot of hate towards Kevin Holland. Does it help that his last fight was good? Yes. Was his last fight against MVP or against that guy he broke his arm? I don't remember, but I think he's just going to be right here teeter-tottering on more liked, and between these two categories, I think he's on the cusp of going into this more hated than liked category. Moving on, Chimaev. We have someone that was the most loved person in the UFC. Let's be realistic. Then, he went into more liked than hated. Then quickly, he's got into the more hated than liked category. He might not be the most hated person on this list, probably behind Bo Nickel, to be honest. But just the inactivity, the fact that this guy was so active to go into so inactive is what's making a lot of UFC fans just start to hate this guy. Moving down, Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards, he's never been the more liked guy. He's never been the more loved guy. People just don't really like Leon like that. He's not the most entertaining fighter. Leon, he's just Leon at the end of the day. Magomed Ankalaev, I think people just hate this guy. Dana hates this man. I hate this man. I've been saying it for a hot minute. Fuck Magomed. He doesn't deserve a title shot. Is it worse than Ian Gary? No. Is it worse than Cyril Gahn? Yes. So he goes right here, third place. Perfect. Marvin Vettori, a little bit of a stupid guy. Do people like him more than they hate him? I think people feel bad for him more than they hate him, to be honest. So I think he's slightly more liked than the rest of these guys. Justin Gaethje, someone who's definitely right there to be in that loved category. I think he is loved after his Max Holloway fight. It didn't go his way. He still fought Max Holloway. He did say he would never want to fight Max Holloway because of the respect and all the stuff he has towards him, but still fought him anyways. A fan favorite fighter. I think it's obvious that he goes in this category, but just how far down the line does he go? Probably right behind someone like Du Bronx. But moving down, there was a point in time where, Max Holloway was just Max Holloway. No one really cared about that, but just of recently, everybody be loving Max Holloway. To be honest, he might be one of the... I don't think he goes over Pereira, to be honest. I think it's a perfect spot over Du Bronx, but he's become one of the most loved UFC fighters in the past few months, the past year, this year specifically. Moving down, MVP. I think MVP is still more liked than what he's disliked. That Ian Gary wasn't that great of a performance, but I still think people like him more. Muhammad Usman, fuck Muhammad Usman, hate this man, cut Muhammad Usman at this point. Probably right behind Jailton Almeida. Muhammad Mokaev. As of recently, there's been a lot of hate for Mokaev, and because of that, I think he's going to go right beside Bo Nickel and Pantoja. I'm trying to speedrun this because we've been here for a minute now, and we still have a good few fighters left to go. We have Merab. There's a point where people hated Merab, but I think his skits and stuff have helped him out a lot. Does it help him out enough to put him into that more liked and hated section? Absolutely not. Probably right here is a good fitting spot. Peter Yan, a point where he was loved. I think he's still more liked than what he is hated by a decent margin, to be honest. Probably around that Ortega spot, I think is a good one. Paulo Costa, there was a point where people hated Paulo Costa. I think those Twitter memes have brought him back. I think the fact that he's fighting again has brought him back. And to be honest, he's more liked than what he is hated. Moving down, we have Makhachev. Makhachev used to be super hated. I remember a point where everyone hated Makhachev. There's been time going on and on. He is definitely one of the more liked and hated fighters at this point. He's fight semi-often. They're always fun, entertaining fights. I think he goes right there. He's on that cusp of being into that loved category. Paddy Pimblett, downfall from being loved all the way up to close to being in that hated category. I think he can bounce back and go back into this more liked and hated one. But right now, let's see how he goes against Bobby Green. I think if he goes out there and sleeps Bobby Green and cuts a nasty promo, he'll probably go into this more liked than hated section. But right now, people be hating Paddy Pimblett, I'm not gonna lie. Manel Kape, I think he used to be more liked than hated, but people are getting sick of this guy constantly pulling out and just not fighting. Go look at this guy's fight career. Go see how inactive he is. I think people are starting to get fed up with Manel Kape. Robert Whittaker, one of those fighters that everyone loves. I think he goes right behind someone like a Justin Gaethje. Then we have Chito Vera. I think people really saw through Chito Vera in that Sean O'Malley fight. Chito Vera, I think he used to be super, super liked. He was on that borderline of being loved, but people saw through him. I don't think people are as high up on Cheetah Vera as they are now. Moving into this one's like controversial. I don't know where to put Sean Strickland. If there was a middle ground, that's where Sean Strickland would go. To be honest, I don't know where to put this guy. I think he's more liked than hated. He's so close to being here, but he's more liked than hated, to be honest. Stipe, I don't see people dogging Stipe like the way they dog John Jones trying to fight Stipe. I think Stipe is more liked than hated. Joseph himself, I think he's more hated than loved by a good margin. Is it more than Ilya Topuria? Probably not. And it's probably more than Merab. There's a lot of people that are just not fan of this guy's personality. Fight style, sure, people like his fight style, but personality, no. I think this is a good place to put him. Umar Nurmagomedov, I think he gets hate just from that Nurmagomedov name and because of the Dana White privilege. So he's borderline more hated, but could go into this category as well. We have Yair. Yair, I can't see him ever the same since he threw that hissy fit and started yelling at Bisping when he eye poked. I think it was Jeremy Stevens. Can't look at him the same way. He's pretty much the same thing with Umar. We have our boy, the fallen one, Tony Ferguson. There is a point where everyone loved this guy. We still love him more than we hate him, but damn, is it getting close to that more hated, because this guy needs to hang up the gloves. But he is definitely still more liked than, I think right here, this is a perfect spot for him. But if he keeps fighting, keeps diminishing his health, keeps ruining his legacy, you just have to hate that guy for being so dumb. Moving down, Raul Rosas Jr., Mr. Chiwiwi himself, definitely way more loved than what he is hated by. Is it by a huge margin like all these other guys? I don't think so. I think there's still some hate for Mr. Chiwiwi, but he is still more liked than hated. Sean O'Malley. I think Sean O'Malley is more hated than what he is liked, to be honest. Is he the most hated guy in this entire roster? No. But he is still more hated than someone like an Umar, a Yair, a Cheeto. To be honest, people only like him for his fight style and his fight style only. So because of that, I think he's on par with someone like a Leon Edwards. Maybe that's a little crazy, but I think so at least. Michael Chandler, you know, God loves a trier. Michael Chandler, I think people still hate him more than they like him. Next up, Roman Dolidze. People don't like Roman. I don't know why, just don't like Roman. We have two more to go to. Sergey Pavlovich. This guy used to be liked. I think people are starting to hate him more than like him, especially from his last performance when he threw a hissy fit when Volkov went to go shake his hand, turned into a little bitch and started going crazy mode. I think people are starting to dislike this guy more and more. Final, last one. We have Tommy Aspinall. I think Tommy, borderline being on that loved category, to be honest. Not quite there yet, but borderline could be there. And yeah, that's every single fighter I have here. You guys have to let me know in the comments below which of these would you switch around. You know, there is places where they could be switched around. You guys have to let me know why. John Jones, I think right now is the most hated UFC fighter in this entire roster. And I think Alexander Volkanovski is the most loved. But yeah, let me know in the comments below. All of this stuff can change within a matter of months depending on performances, interviews, stuff like that. This isn't a concrete list. All of this stuff can change super fast, just like how MMA changes every single day. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching to the end of the video. We are on that goal to get to 500 subscribers. We are literally only a few subscribers away, so if you haven't yet, leave a like on this video and subscribe with those post notifications turned on so you never miss any of my newest videos. Yeah guys, there's really not that much else left to say except for I will see you guys in my next video.